most of my childhood memories involve me being sick. One of my first memories is being in the hospital when I was 3. It's up there with like my 3rd birthday. Like that's when I start remembering things.
Hey there. I want to welcome you to In Sickness and in Health, a podcast about chronic illness, disability, medical traumas, and everyday uncomfortable healthcare experiences. My name is Cara Gale. I'm not a doctor or a medical professional. I'm just a person and a patient who really wants to talk about this stuff more. In this episode, I talked to Becca about how she had Giardia as an infant, pediatric migraines, having brain surgery twice, the wonders of high-sodium diets, and her video game web series Millennial Fair. We cover her Arnold Chiari Malformation, Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, and dysautonomia. This episode is the 4th in our series celebrating Dysautonomia Awareness Month. On In Sickness and in Health, I plan to feature a wide variety of health experiences, but dysautonomia is personal for me. It affects me every single day and has for most of my life. So I wanted to kick off the show with a series of interviews about something very close to my heart. I want to make clear that the In Sickness and in Health podcast or any of its associated content is not medical advice. If you're experiencing a medical issue, please seek qualified and timely medical help. I know this system sucks, but I wish you a lot of luck. We're all going through this together, and I cannot stress enough how different we all are, even if we were to have identical medical files. There are so many factors that go into shaping a person's experience of health and illness, and just because something worked for one person does not mean it will work for you or anyone else. I want to ask my audience to remain respectful of the very personal decisions of my guests, and remember that the choices of others do not reflect or affect your own choices.
I remember when I think I was about 8 months old, they found a parasite in the drinking water. I grew up in New Jersey in like the suburbs, and in this wealthy Bergen County town, they had Giardia in the water. And
oh my God.
Yeah, and so for an adult, it's you're sick for a while. My boyfriend actually got it a while ago when he was on vacation. But when you're an infant, you can die very easily from being dehydrated. And my mom's told me stories about how I was crying because I was sick, but I had no tears because there was just nothing left in me. And I had to keep going back to the doctor for years because I never really I guess my stomach never really fully recovered from it. For the most part, it's okay now, but up until I was in middle school, I had so many stomach issues, and they said it was from damage from that because I had it, and they didn't know what it was for a long time because they're not going to test for it, since I hadn't gone on vacation or anything. And they found out, and then they put a newspaper article out being like, there's Giardia in the water, that's why everybody's sick. And there's a picture of me being all gaunt and I look like a little African baby that hasn't eaten in months because my stomach is all swollen, and it was it was unpleasant. And so one of my first memories is going to the hospital, staying overnight while they did stool samples. That's one of my first memories. It was awful.
Look for all the episodes in our Dysautonomia series in your podcast feed or check insicknesspod.com. The nonprofit Dysautonomia International has been working hard to raise awareness, and their slogan for the Awareness Month is Make Some Noise for Turquoise. So that's exactly what we're doing. If you want to know more about dysautonomia, go back to episode 1. Dysauto whata? The president of Dysautonomia International gives us a crash course on just what dysautonomia is. We talk about the diagnostic delay that many patients face and some of the research that her organization has been able to fund. I interviewed multiple people with dysautonomia because it can affect individuals with different primary diagnoses in drastically different ways. Myself and each person that I interviewed have a form of dysautonomia called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I know it's a mouthful. We call it POTS for short, but POTS is only a small piece of what each of us have going on. Like myself and yesterday's interview subject, Becca also has EDS and POTS. If you want to know more about both, go back and listen to episode 3, Accessibility Means More Than Ramps Part 1. We discuss the challenges and surprises of living with the two. But Becca has another obscure and weird-sounding diagnosis to share with you. She has something called Arnold Chiari Malformation, which basically means...
My brain is falling out of my skull, is what it's herniating out of my skull. Well, it isn't anymore, but it was. And it causes just a whole slew of weird symptoms that just are not connected at all. So everything is just so out there, and it's really scary, actually.
We all have a hole in the base of our skull called the foramen magnum. That's Latin for great hole. It's through this hole that the spinal cord is supposed to descend from the brainstem. In people with Chiari, that hole is often smaller than normal, and the lower hind part of their brain, the cerebellar tonsils, actually start to protrude through. It's thought that problems with the flow of cerebrospinal fluid are responsible, at least in part, for the bizarro symptoms that many Chiari patients experience. We still don't really know why Chiari malformations happen. They can occur on their own or in combination with conditions like EDS and are also associated with POTS. It is thought that the majority of patients with Chiari have had it since birth. There are 5 types of Arnold Chiari malformation, each involving symptoms stemming from problems where the brain and the spinal cord connect.
I know it's based on the size of your herniation. I actually don't know. Okay. I'm not entirely sure what mine was. I was a little too young to kind of pay attention to that.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah.
Becca will talk more about living with Chiari, EDS, and POTS in the rest of this episode. Tomorrow's episode is the last in our dysautonomia series. Kathy will tell us about trying to find balance in managing and thinking about her condition, the spoon theory, parenting with chronic illness, and how her condition has affected her music career. She lives with rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's syndrome, POTS, complex chronic headaches, and interstitial cystitis. So I hope you'll subscribe and tune in to In Sickness and in Health. We have a lot of great stuff coming up for you, including the episodes celebrating Dysautonomia Awareness Month that are up this week. You can find us at insicknesspod.com and on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram at insicknesspod. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Google+. We'll be posting updates and content related to the show on the In Sickness and in Health blog and on social media. If you can take the time to rate and review us on iTunes, we'd really appreciate it. It helps other people find the show. Tell your family, tell your friends, tell your doctors, and stay with us right now to hear the rest of my conversation with Becca.
I feel very fortunate that my grandmother was a nurse for many years. So she was very educated, and she's also very pushy. So when anything was wrong, she always kind of forced my mom to go to the doctor, or even, my dad, or, anybody else. And so I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I was able to get diagnoses like pretty quickly, because it's been sort of how my life has been, and for my entire family, just everybody goes to the doctor all the time. Growing up, at least, I've kind of changed that a little bit. But also, my mom she was in a ski accident a couple years ago. Now she's disabled because of it. And so my brother has rheumatoid arthritis, and for years he was sick. And he's finally got it under control. But, that was also a thing that was going on for many years. So it's none of this is new to anyone. So the sort of chronic illness thing I'm not the only one in my family who has it, so that's good. And I'm also, I think, makes it kind of easier for my family to kind of deal with it, because it's not just me, I'm not just the problem child that's always sick.
Did your brother have a hard time getting diagnosed?
Yeah, he had a very hard time. He's very athletic. He's always been really into sports, but he's also always been overweight. But nobody could really understand why, because, we ate the same foods as like my mom and my dad, and, and he was way more athletic than I was, because I was always sick. But, he was on the baseball team, the hockey team, he was on the track team. He did everything, and it just never really made sense why he was always having all these joint issues, and they thought it was because of his weight. And it actually, it put a huge strain on his athletic ability as he got older. Like senior year of high school, he couldn't play any sports. And it wasn't until he was in college where it was like to the point where he couldn't even get out of bed. He's like, I know I need to exercise, but I just can't do it. And they thought he had lupus for a long time and a couple other autoimmune conditions. And eventually he lives in New England, he lives in Maine. He had to go to Boston to finally get a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis, and now he has to take really expensive and strong medication. I'm pretty sure he's taking some sort of cancer medication at this point. It's expensive and it's harsh on your immune system. And
yeah. Can you tell me a bit about what you've been diagnosed with and what exactly does that mean for you?
Well, I guess the base of it is I was diagnosed with Arnold Chiari Malformation when I was 11 years old. I was 11 years old. That has kind of been the biggest factor in my life because it has caused so many other issues, or it is the cause of so many other issues that I have.
Right.
So that's the big one. And then I was diagnosed with EDS and POTS back in February of 2013, I want to say, after I fainted at work. And they took me in, and my heart rate was, I think it was like 160 when I was standing. And they kept me overnight. And they actually thought I had a tumor on my adrenal gland called a pheochromocytoma, I believe is what it's called.
Yeah, they're really rare, but
my grandmother had one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she diagnosed it herself because, she's a boss. Everybody thought that I had one of those because she had one. So I had to stay overnight in the hospital for like 3 days, and they did 2 24-hour urinalysis tests to check for that. Mm-hmm. Those are like, these symptoms, they match, and, I got fortunate that, because I didn't have a tumor on my adrenal gland, which is excellent, they were like, okay, so you probably have this condition called POTS because you have Arnold Chiari, and they kind of go hand in hand. So about a month later, I got a phone call from a electrophysiologist's office to schedule an appointment for a tilt test. And that's a test where they lay you on a table and they stabilize all of your vitals, and they keep, they monitor them. And then they stand you up, and you stand there with your arms out like this for what feels like a million years to see if you faint. And it is a miserable test because you're not allowed to do anything that you would normally do to prevent yourself from feeling awful. Like you can't eat, you can't drink, can't take your meds, you can't eat any salt, you can't do anything. And then they just watch you look miserable and hope you faint. And it was awful. It was awful. But I didn't faint, but my heart rate stayed very high and my blood pressure dropped significantly. And I think I was only up there for a half hour, but oh my God, it felt like days.
Yeah, mine was only 20 minutes, but it felt like forever.
It was just one of the worst experiences. And I remember hearing about the test and being like, oh, that's not so bad. But when you actually have to do it, it's awful. And I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy.
Oh. Mine actually wasn't that bad.
Really?
Yeah, it was much worse the fact that they had told me to fast from the night before, so I hadn't eaten anything and I couldn't take my medication. And then they told me to get to the hospital 2 hours before the test, so I did. And then the doctor showed up to the test 2 hours after it was scheduled for. Yeah, he always showed up 2 hours late to every appointment I had with him. And like I'm totally fine with waiting for doctor's appointments. Like I'm sympathetic to the challenges of working on an appointment basis. Like things happen, I get that, but 2 hours every single time, like that's unacceptable. So I was sitting in a hospital gown, freezing, not having been able to eat or anything like that for, 4+ hours. And by the time the test actually rolled around, I was like, wouldn't anyone have pot symptoms
Yeah, right?
at this point? Like, I haven't eaten, like, all I've been able to drink is water, so I'm just flushing all of the electrolytes out of my
Yeah.
body.
They
Yeah.
let you drink water? They didn't even let me drink water. They wouldn't even let me watch TV. Yeah. I brought a book thinking, I could like sit there and read because they told me that I had to lay there for a long time to like stabilize my
Right.
vitals. So I brought a book and they're like, nope, can't do any of that. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any other diagnoses or like weird stuff that comes along with any of that?
Not really. I mean, just every day is kind of a challenge, I'm lucky that that's kind of what it is, but every day I'm kind of waiting for something else to happen because I feel like that's just how my life is,
Yeah.
Every day there's something, like I've had cysts on my ovaries. I've had, like just anything and everything, and every day is a new surprise. But those are the three big things that I feel like have the most influence on my life at this point.
Can you just talk a little bit about the symptoms that were associated with your Chiari, before you even had your first surgery?
They were all so weird. I remember I was in second grade and we used to have to sit. We would have like a carpeted area of the classroom and the teacher would read or do like some sort of little lesson plan on the floor while we all sat on the carpet. And I remember having to sit there and just kind of my head just kind of tilting to the side, and I would put it back up, but I couldn't hold it up, and everybody thought I was just being disruptive. I'm like, I really can't hold my head up. Can I sit at my desk? And of course they're like, no, you have to sit on the floor. Everybody else is sitting on the floor. Like, you don't get special treatment. And that was kind of the first symptom that I had, was just a heavy head. And things kind of grew from that. I wouldn't be able to see the blackboard random days. Like, I would go to the eye doctor and they'd be like, oh, you're fine. And I'm like, well, I'm fine today, but yesterday I wasn't fine. And, everybody just kind of told my mom, like, she just wants attention, she's just being a brat, and she agreed. She's like, yeah, she probably is. Like, she's fine now. Like, she never really complains that much at home. And it's because, when I'm at home, I can move when I want to. I can sit the way I want to. Like, I don't need to read a blackboard from, 15 feet away. And, but then it started to develop into, like, tinglings in my hands and my feet. And then the headaches started when I was probably in 5th grade. And, not too many 10-year-olds get migraines. And
I did. I was
Really?
a 10-year-old with migraines. Yeah, they started when I was like 7 years old.
Really?
And at that time, like, the diagnostic criteria for migraine was still very, just very narrow. And there was no diagnostic criteria for pediatric migraines,
Right.
like, they thought that children didn't get migraines. That has since been revised extensively, but, like, they sent me to a pediatric neurologist, they did a workup, and then they were like, well, I guess it must be psychosomatic, and then just shuffled me off to a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And I would get migraines, but then also in between getting migraines and, like, everyday, life, I would have really severe headaches that would kind of fluctuate between just like stiff shoulders to sinus pressure headaches, even though there was no reason for that. Like, I wasn't sick, there was no allergens or anything like that. But, like, every day I had a headache to some extent or another. And it wasn't until I was in 6th grade, I had just started a new gymnastics group. And I was super excited, and it was like the 2nd or 3rd day I was there, and I was on the tumble track, which is like a long trampoline, and to do like a handspring or something, and when I landed, I landed fine, but I just had this lightning bolt of just severe pain throughout every inch of my body, and I just fell over, and everybody just kind of thought that I just didn't land it, but I was fine. It was just like, I was in shock. I was scared. I was crying, and they're like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I was like, I was in so much pain. I'm fine now, but I was in so much pain. And so they called my mom, and my mom picks me up, and she's like, all right, we're gonna do something about this. And that's how I got diagnosed. But for a long time, like you said, they were like, it's in her head, she's just being a brat, you know, she just wants attention, for a long time. And eventually they came up with a diagnosis, and I had to have brain surgery, and everybody who, you know, doubted me was like, oh, we're sorry.
How many doctors did you have to see before you got that diagnosis?
I actually only went to 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I had the same pediatrician my entire life. She was the one who diagnosed my Giardia after years. She had saw me when I was born, and then she took like a leave of absence, and then my mom called her when she found out that she was back and was like, please see her. And she diagnosed me. So she had I had a long history with her, and so when we went in, she was like, you know, I could send her for a whole bunch of tests, but I want to rule out any sort of brain issue. So let's get her a CAT scan and an MRI. And it was right there on the MRI, Arnold Chiari Malformation. And this was kind of pre-Google. This was a little too early for Google, and my mom went to the library and was like looking for books about it. And I went to a bunch of doctors after that, but I remember getting the diagnosis pretty quickly from my pediatrician.
And so with the Chiari, you had a decompression surgery for that.
Yep.
When did you get that done?
I actually had to have it done twice.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, it was a great time. I was diagnosed in December of 2000, I want to say. And I was decompressed the first time in 2001 in January, right after New Year's. I remember, I feel I'm really lucky. I live right outside of New York City, so I was able to, my mom and I and one of her good friends who is she's a nurse for a neurosurgeon, but she lives in, I think she was in Colorado or something at the time. So she flew out to come with us to see all these doctors in the city. So, you know, because she knew what a lot of the mumbo jumbo they were saying was and could translate it for my mom. And we found this one doctor who was like world renowned. Anybody who needed any sort of like pediatric neurosurgeon like wanted to go to him. And, you know, we met him, and he was a very friendly and exciting guy. He definitely was, you know, like a mad scientist. And but my mom was really, you know, she's like, I think this is the right guy. So he did the surgery.
This operation is meant to create more space around or decompress that hole at the base of the skull. This is done by removing a small portion of bone at the back of the head, which is called a suboccipital craniectomy. These steps expose the protective covering of the brain and spinal cord called the dura. The bone removal relieves compression of the tonsils, and sometimes that procedure alone may restore normal CSF flow. Depending on the size of the herniation, the surgeon may take steps to shrink the tonsils. This shrinkage ensures that there is no blockage of CSF flow and is then patched with synthetic or biological material. The enlarged dura opening and the space around the tonsils provide relief for many patients. But if you haven't figured it out by listening to the episodes so far in the dysautonomia series, patients like us never quite go as planned.
And we're not sure exactly why they did this, but when they were talking about my surgery, they said that they have to put a patch on your dura. And they said, because they have to open it, so they have to patch it back up. And they said they were going to use a bovine patch, the outer membrane of a cow's heart, I think is what they said they were going to use. And when I woke up from surgery, the doctors were talking to my mom, and they said that they used Gore-Tex instead of bovine. And my mom's like, Gore-Tex is like what they make jackets out of.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I have rain jackets that are made out of Gore-Tex.
Exactly. So my mom's like, that's really weird, but you're the doctor, you know what to do. And I think I had a very long recovery. It was longer than expected. I think I was out of school. I had tutors coming to my house. I think I was out for almost 3 months. I know I was out for full 8 weeks, but I think I went back, like I would go one day and then I would have a tutor come the next day for another couple weeks after that. But they were really surprised, like, it shouldn't take that long to be able to, get back to school. And eventually, a couple months after that, I was fine. But then I hit puberty, and I had my period, and it was awful. It just, all the symptoms came back, and it got really hard to find another neurosurgeon who would look at me, because they were convinced that it was hormonal, like my back pain that I was having. They're like, oh, that's just cramps, and your migraines are, you're becoming a woman, that's what happens. And my mom was like, oh, hell no, that's not what this is. She can't do gymnastics anymore, because I was really into that as a kid. She can't do cheerleading. There's something wrong. And so we were eventually, it took about another 6 or 7 months until I was able to, the insurance company would let me get another MRI, because they did one right after surgery, and they're like, oh, you're fine. But they did another one, and I had gotten a ton of scar tissue where the Gore-Tex patch was. And so we found another neurosurgeon, also in the city, and he was like, you have a ton of scar tissue. It could be because of this material. It could also be because of, hitting puberty. But regardless, we have to replace it. So I had to have another surgery, but I recovered much, much, much faster. I think I was only out of school for 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
At that point. I was in the hospital for a little bit longer. I was in the hospital for 8 days, but then I bounced back so much quicker. And, for the most part, I've been much better. I'm very, sensitive to spinal fluid pressure. So when I was in high school, I was getting the headaches again, but they were able to do an MRI, and they were like, you're clear, but we have to do a spinal tap to check your spinal fluid pressure. And so they did that. I went to, again, I'm so fortunate that I live where I do, because there's a Chiari Institute in Long Island. It's an hour and a half away. I'm so lucky. And they did a spinal tap there, and it was high, but it wasn't super high, not to the point where they wanted to put a shunt in right away, but they released a lot of the pressure, and I felt fantastic. After once things kind of leveled out and you could sit up again, I was great. But they had to do it 3 more times, because eventually it comes back. But right. Since then, I've been pretty good, with that, in terms of that. But I still have this thing in the back of my head that's like, you might need to have a shunt put in one day, or another spinal tap. It's scary.
Yeah,
those are
terrifying.
Scary things.
Yeah, spinal tap is pretty close to the top of my list of things I don't want to ever have to do.
It actually doesn't hurt that bad.
Really?
Saying, I've had them done 3 times. They, if you go to somebody good, it's just kind of pressure, but it's the fact that they're sticking a needle this big into your spine is
yeah,
it's awful.
That's the part that I'm not okay with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you feel when you got that diagnosis? Did you feel relieved? Were you freaked out? And how do you feel about all of this stuff now?
Well, with the Chiari, I was terrified, because they told me right away that the only cure was to have brain surgery, and I'd never even had stitches before. And I was like, they're going to cut open my brain? I was so scared. But, I feel like anybody who gets a diagnosis that, means that they have to have some really invasive surgery or any sort of really intense therapy for it, whether it be drug or surgery or anything like that, is really terrifying. No matter how old you are. But, for the Chiari, I was terrified. But when I was diagnosed with POTS and EDS, it was a little different. It was more of a relief, because I was like, thank God they know what it is. And I'm not running around for the next 3 years like so many people, so many horror stories I hear of people who have had problems their entire life and have just been told it's all in their head for years. And I was so relieved that somebody believed me, just based on these stories I've heard.
Yeah, everybody's got a story about that.
They do.
Yeah. Can you tell me a bit about your relationship with medication, and do you have any mixed feelings about it?
I do and I don't. I'm actually not on anything right now other than my birth control. I was supposed to take, they wanted to put me on Midodrine, I think.
Midodrine, yep.
But my insurance at the time was really awful, and the side effects really scared me, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't do it because right now things are pretty good. I want to say 65% of the time I'm okay. The other percent is not that great, but I know what causes my symptoms and I know how to relieve them, and I feel like that is a better trade-off than the side effects that I was reading about, and that's kind of not good. You probably shouldn't, there's so many there's side effects to everything, and they all sound awful, but I was really scared, and I was like, you know what, the fact that my insurance won't cover it right now, or I was like, I'll just hold off, and if I don't see any changes, if I don't feel any better, then I'll go back to it. But
right. You can always take the medication at another time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that's been over a year, and I actually, like a few weeks ago, I was like, maybe I should try it now. Maybe now is the time. But it was like a week where I was really like, I had to call out of work because I could barely get out of bed. And that's when I was like, maybe I should go back and try it again, or like go and try it. But I still haven't done it, and I don't like medication, and I don't really have a good reason to not like it. I'm just scared.
Yeah, I mean, you've been through a lot,
Yeah,
and for a lot of us with POTS and EDS and all this other stuff, a lot of us have sensitivities to medication or like under sensitivities to medication, and it's a nightmare. I'm on a ton of medications and I'm fine with that, but like every time I have to add a new one because I'm already on so much stuff, that causes a whole bunch of problems. I have to worry about interactions, and then like I'm super sensitive to everything, so there's that too, and it's just ridiculous.
It's scary.
Yeah.
It's so scary to me.
Yeah. What are some of the things that like trigger your symptoms? You said you know some of those.
Yeah. It's funny is because for so long I thought that I got car sick really easily, and I guess I do, but oh man, it's bad. Like it's kind of different than like what most of my friends get car sick with. Like they get like nauseous or like something. I get vertigo, and like I can't even like look up directions on my phone while the car is in motion. Like yesterday, like I was coming back from Connecticut with my boyfriend, and he started driving, and I was like, wait, I can't get the GPS going while the car is going, like, because then I'm out. It's awful. Being dehydrated, which you probably know is just the worst thing on the planet.
Yes. Taking another obligatory sip of Gatorade.
Yeah, exactly. Like being dehydrated is terrible. Also, any sort of illness really makes things worse. So like if even a cold is 10 times worse. And
I had a stomach virus at the beginning of October, and I'm not still sick with the virus, but I'm still sick because of like the fallout in my body from the virus.
I had the stomach flu on New Year's Day.
Oh.
And I remember like calling my mom. She's like, "Are you sure you're not hungover?" And I'm like, "I didn't even drink. Like, I'm not hungover. I'm dying." Like, I couldn't. And I was so sick for like that whole next like 5 days. And like I wasn't sick with the stomach, but like everything was just slightly tilted. It was miserable.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, any sort of illness.
Yeah. So you mentioned you're on birth control. Do you find that your hormones, like coming and going, mess with that at all?
My hormones are so crazy. I've never been this insane in my life, but like I need to be on it. Like I have to. But oh my gosh, like I have a temper now. I've never had a temper before in my life, and I snap at people all the time, and I've never done that.
And this is since you started the birth control?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because birth control actually, for my POTS symptoms, has helped a lot because I'm on like one of the continuous ones, so I only get a period every 3 months instead of every month, because if I get it every month, I spend like 3 out of those 4 weeks feeling super terrible. So I just kind of space it out. And that's actually helped a lot and made me a lot more stable. but my boobs hurt all of the time.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, compared to like my whole body feeling like
That's
it's about
true.
to fall apart, it's not that bad. But
Yeah, I guess that's something I should look into because I also, I have terrible periods now, and I get, I'm more susceptible to my symptoms when I'm on my period.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, it's probably something I should look into.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many options for birth control out there right now. Like, it's a little overwhelming, but everyone's body is a little bit different. So some people have to go through 2 or 3 different ones before they find the one that works the best for them. And that really sucks because you need to be on it for a few months to like really get a good idea of how it's affecting you and like that sort of thing. So it's a ridiculous process, but for me, it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, that's definitely something I should look into because
Yeah.
what I'm doing now is not working out. I'm a terrible human being for 7 days a month.
Better only 7 days.
Yeah, exactly.
Than 30. Did you have any like grand plans for your life that have been derailed by your health?
Yeah, I've always wanted to travel, and my company did a trip to Costa Rica last year for like our holiday party was a trip to Costa Rica, and the thought of like getting sick in Costa Rica was so scary to me. And like this year we're going to Mexico, and I'm like, I'm not doing anything that could possibly result in me fainting. Like I don't want any of that. We had a day trip planned to go hike a volcano. I'm like, I can't do that because if I faint on a volcano in Costa Rica, I'm going to die there. Like I can't go whitewater rafting because I can't risk anything happening to my head, So things like that have been kind of put on hold for now. I would love to go to Japan one day, but at the same time, like, I'm just so afraid of like ending up in a hospital in a foreign country where I don't speak the language.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's scary enough to end up in a hospital in the United States when you do speak the language, and it's like still a nightmare. If you didn't speak the language at all, that would be really terrifying.
I actually ended up in a hospital when I was in Italy, when I was in Rome. Something totally unrelated. I had a kidney infection that I was just kind of like, oh, I'm fine. I'm going to Italy.
Right.
I was on the plane and I was like, I'm going to die. Like, this is terrible. Why did I not go to the doctor before I left? And I tried to push through it. And then I was at the Vatican and I was like, take me to the hospital. So I ended up in a Roman hospital, but I was so lucky. I was so lucky that there was a woman, because they sent me to gynecology. There was a woman there who was waiting for test results, and she was a pregnant woman. So there was a woman who was in the waiting room, had gone to dental school at NYU, and spoke perfect English. And she's like, I can help translate if you want, if you're comfortable with that. And I was like, yes, please help me. And I was able to get some antibiotics, and they gave me some painkillers because, it's Rome. Here's a handful of Percocet. And I was able to enjoy the rest of my trip. So that was really good. But I was so scared. I was like, I'm gonna be in a hospital where nobody speaks English.
Yeah. I mean, I think even more scary is to be like in America and need medical care.
Yes.
Like I read a story about a pregnant couple from Canada that were like in Hawaii on their honeymoon or something, and she wound up giving birth and it cost them $1 million.
I didn't pay anything when I was in Italy. But yeah, exactly. Like if you come here to visit and you end up in the hospital, like good luck. Hopefully you have some money saved up.
Yeah. Oh God.
Like you're gonna be in a lot of trouble otherwise.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Tell me about Millennial Fair.
Oh, okay. So I guess it was probably back in the winter. One of my friends and my two coworkers and I decided that it'd be a really fun passion project to, learn stuff with, filming and editing and just kind of make some video game videos. We're all really into video games, and it's been a lot of fun. We actually have come to, we used to film in our office, but now I have space, and I know this is audio, but behind me is my green screen for when we do film here, and it's been so much fun. You know, we don't get too many views, we don't get too many subscribers or anything, but it's really just an awesome passion project, and we're all learning so much about just the million Adobe, you know, products that are out there, and it's been so much fun and like weirdly rewarding. Like when we see one of our videos has over 1,000 views, it's like, oh my God, people actually care.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it's really neat that you can like just dick around and make something and then put it on the internet and like thousands of people can see it.
Exactly. It's wild. It's really fun. Like we just hit 101 subscribers and we're like freaking out. We're like, I don't even know 100 people. Like there's people who we don't know who are subscribed. Like that's so cool.
Yeah, that is really neat.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing that you've done so far?
With Millennial Fair?
Yeah.
We did a dating simulator called Date Ariane, and it's a terrible dating simulator game where you just point and click at, you know, your options. So she'll be like, what should we do tonight? And you pick like, you know, the options are like eat dinner, have a drink, go outside. And the whole point of the game is to like sleep with this girl, this character. And it's so cheesy, and but one of my Millennial Fair buddies, Adrian, is the nicest guy on the planet, but he's a little awkward. And so we did the video together, and he just pretends to hit on me the whole time, and it's so cringy, but it's hysterical. He just hits on me the whole time, and it's so cringy. But it's one of our highest viewed videos, and we kind of dismissed it, and then one day just looking at, you know, what each video, like the view count is, and it's like 1,000 views. Who's watching this? And now I think it's up to almost 3,000. Like,
oh wow.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's really fun, and it's a really silly game. It's something else.
How much time does making this stuff take up for you?
It used to take forever.
Yeah.
Now that we've kind of got it down to a science, it doesn't really take that long. So what we normally do is there's a program on the computer that we use that captures the screen, that screen captures the game. We have a little microphone that we use, and we have a camera. And so really the hardest part is just syncing them all up, is syncing up the gameplay with the video footage and the audio. And then, you know, just have to layer it properly in Adobe Premiere, and then you're good to go. It's really not that difficult. There is a learning curve to it, like with any Adobe product.
Yeah.
But when all things said and done, it probably takes about a half hour at most to make what we call a one shot, which is when we play a game and do a little commentary over it to, you know, put it together. It takes about a half hour.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, so it doesn't really take that long. At first, it took hours.
Yeah.
We had no idea what we were doing, but it's been a while now, so we know what we're doing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have you had to like put that on hold or anything because of your health?
Not because of my health, because I'm always sitting. There's been a few times where we've done videos that are not gameplay, where we talk about when we review other games, like older games, where I have to stand. And there's been a few times where I'm just like, we have to stop, like, leave me alone, let me just have a soy sauce packet and lay down, and I'll be fine in a half hour, and then we can finish. That's happened a few times, especially in the summer, because we were filming in our office, and there was no air conditioning.
Oh, God.
And we were on the 6th floor of a big building, and there was a few times where I was like, I can't do this anymore. And, you know, I'm lucky that they understand, but at the same time, like, I'm so lucky they understand, because because when I feel that way, I also get really snappy.
Yeah.
Especially now that I'm on birth control, because I just like, shut up, leave me alone, like let me just relax and get this over with.
Yeah.
That's really the only time that's really kind of been an issue, but for the most part, like, I'm always sitting, so that's good.
Yeah. Can you give me a snapshot of a time when someone like said or did something that was really clueless or inconsiderate about your medical condition?
Yeah. I really hate unsolicited medical advice. And there was my ex-boyfriend and I, we were at dinner at his parents' house, and it was it had been a while since my diagnosis, and like his family knew about it, and they were very understanding of everything. And I remember one time we were at dinner and his mom was like, "So how have you been feeling?" And I was like, "Oh, I've been doing really well." And his grandmother was like, "Oh, I was thinking about you the other day. I was thinking that maybe you should just rub your head more." And I remember, like, his mom just starts laughing. She's like, "Why would that do? What would that do? Like, Grandma, like, why would that help?" And she's like, "You get the blood flowing up there." And everybody's just like, "Oh my God." And I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh man, that one really sticks out. But then I've also had people tell me that I need to eat more red meat because I need more iron for some reason.
Okay.
Because that makes you dizzy. And I'm like, that's not what it is.
Yeah.
And people have also told me to stop eating so much salt.
Uh-huh.
They're like, you're going to have really high blood pressure. And I'm like, my blood pressure is extremely low. Like,
right.
I need more salt.
The irony is not lost on me that, like, we're in a time where everyone's doctor is telling them to get less salt, and my doctor is telling me to get more salt.
Yeah.
Like, I recognize how weird this is, but this is my life.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about getting a Morton Salt Girl tattoo because of how much salt I eat.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Right?
Yeah.
Carry around salt packets all the time.
Gotta love that salt.
You do. It's delicious. I'm glad I like it. I couldn't imagine, like, hating salty food.
Yeah. Well, I always ate so much salty food, So
Yeah.
then when I was finally diagnosed with POTS and I found out that, the primary treatment for it is additional salt and fluids, I was like, oh, this makes so much more sense now.
Yeah.
But even then, I liked normally salty foods. So to be able to get the amount of salt that I was supposed to get was really a challenge at first because, I have to salt things to a ridiculous extent now.
Yeah.
And now I just do the salt in my mouth thing, which
Yeah.
seems to be the most efficient way of getting it.
I'm a fan of soy sauce.
Okay. Yeah.
I like soy sauce packets because
Yeah.
they don't leave my teeth hurt sometimes when I just pour salt in. So I have soy sauce packets in my desk, and I keep salt in my purse because I'd rather the salt packets break than a soy sauce packet breaking in my purse.
Yeah, that's very smart. How has your health affected your relationship with your family?
It's actually made it a little better. I guess because I'm not the only one who's sick, so we all kind of are compassionate for one another because we're all kind of sick. So that's good. I also feel like that my mom is definitely the most sick, so it is good that I can still relate to her, but I can also help her out. She's never asked for help, but whenever I'm around or she's around, because sometimes she sees a lot of doctors in New Jersey, even though she doesn't live around here anymore. I always try to help out. And I think the fact that I have a level of sympathy that goes beyond just like my mom's sick to I know how hard this can be, makes for a better relationship between the two of us.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. But it's also stressful too, because we're both sick, and sometimes we can't help each other, but we're both able to talk to each other almost all the time. So that's always good.
Yeah, that's fantastic to have
Yeah.
somebody that you can talk to that gets it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Have you had any friends disappear on you?
Yeah, kind of. Shortly after my diagnosis, I was really sick. I could really only go to work, and I was doing short days, and I couldn't go out. And a lot of my friends thought that I was just ditching them, and I wasn't. It's not that I didn't want to go. It's not that I didn't want to go to your birthday party. Has nothing to do with you. I just can't do it, and I remember I have one friend who, for 3 years in a row, I missed her birthday party. One year was because I don't exactly remember what happened the first year. The second year, I had a terrible allergic reaction to something. I still don't know what it is, but like my face was swollen. I was like, I can't go. And then the third time was I was in the hospital after I'd fainted at work. And, everybody's like, she never hangs out with us anymore. And she was like, she's sick. Leave her alone. And so, like, she's still been one of my friends. But a lot of those people who are like trying to talk in her ear, like, she's not trying hard enough. They've kind of, moved away, moved out of my life.
Well, it sounds like who needs them anyway.
Exactly. Like at that point, I don't want to be your friend if you don't think that, if you don't have any compassion for it, but.
Yeah. What do you think might be different if people knew what you go through every day?
What might be different? I feel like people probably wouldn't give me such an attitude when I say I can't do something. Sometimes it's as simple as, I just can't get up and get myself a glass of water. Can you do that for me? And most of the time people are like, yeah, sure, why not? But then sometimes people are like, you have legs, do it yourself,
Yeah.
I just, right now, I just can't get up. That's, that's kind of the big thing, is I just wish people understood that, I might look fine, but I'm really not okay right now.
Yep. I understand that for sure.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you beat yourself up for on a regular basis?
I guess the fact that I am so scared that I'm not going to feel well that I avoid things. Like, I could travel. I absolutely could. But I am just so scared that I'm going to go somewhere and I'm going to get sick, or I'm going to get there and I'm not going to be able to enjoy myself because I don't feel well.
Right.
And I end up not doing it. And that, I should just do it, but I can't get it out of my head that I'm sick. You should be taking care of yourself and not traveling. But, I have to live at some point. I can't just stay in New Jersey the rest of my life. I have to go out and try new things and do new things. But it's very scary when you have this thing in the back of your head that's telling you you're unwell. You need to, watch out for these things and, try to be safe and, stay where you're comfortable in case something happens. And, that's really what I beat myself up most about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I really can't travel,
No.
Every time I try, it is a disaster. So
flying makes me feel awful.
Yeah, I haven't been able to fly in several years. I just drove to Philadelphia a few weeks ago, and it was not a good idea. I'm glad I went, but I definitely should not have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I feel very fortunate that, for me, it's not every day I feel awful. It's some days I feel fine. Some days I feel awful.
Yeah.
So, I feel like I can do things like that. I feel like I can travel and see the world, but I'm so scared that, one of those few days where I feel awful is going to be, the day that I'm in Paris, or, even in Philly,
Yeah.
Somewhere where I'm not familiar.
Well, this is a good segue to my next question, which is, what do you worry about with your health? And is there anything big or small that takes up a lot of space in your brain?
Well, being out of my comfort zone is very scary. Also, simple little things like if I go to the supermarket and the line's really long, I'm like, oh, God.
Oh, yeah. I just don't go grocery shopping usually. I just don't do it anymore because it's such a nightmare situation.
Yeah, sometimes if the line is really long, usually when I go food shopping now is I can go through the express lane, which is sometimes just as long, but the Stop and Shop near my house has a really great one. It's usually really fast. But it's so scary, it's always there, that going to the mall, I can walk till, the sun comes up, but I can't stand still.
Yeah.
so lines are just, I'm terrified of them.
Yeah.
I'm just scared of lines. I'm scared of.
They're terrifying for me too. I had to go to Party City yesterday, which is not something that you want to do on a Saturday, the week before Halloween.
Like, before Halloween.
Yeah, that was not one of the better experiences that I've had recently. What are your goals and priorities with the management of your condition?
I guess I would like my good days to be, to be better, because they're still not great. I think that I don't think I'm ever going to be totally normal, and I'm fine with that. That's just how it is, and I'm okay with that. But I want my good days to just be better, because I can't really hope for my bad days to be less frequent, but I can, I'm hoping that eventually that my good days I'll be able to do more in them, as opposed to just kind of being a normal human being. I'd like to actually feel good, the way I used to feel.
Yeah.
Which, I've always been sick, so there's been very few times where I've felt totally 100%. But there's been times, and right before, maybe about a year before my POTS diagnosis, I had a really good couple months where I was like, this is amazing. Like,
What's
I was
that
great.
like?
I know, it's so weird. My head wasn't cloudy. I think that's kind of one of my big symptoms now, is just everything's slightly foggy all the time. And I remember, like, I always have jaw pain now, and like I remember just kind of waking up and, it felt like I was breathing like really cool fresh air all day. I can't
That
really
sounds
explain it.
delightful.
Yeah, it was just like, it was euphoric in a way, and I'm like, this is great. This is great. I was in mentally the best state I've ever been in. But it didn't last very long, and it'd be really nice to feel that way, a few more times.
Yeah. What advice would you give to somebody who was just diagnosed this morning?
Be patient. Be patient. Learn to recognize the signs that your body gives you. You're not going to feel better right away, and there'll be things that you'll see that will make you feel better, and then you'll also find things that make you feel awful, and there's a lot of trial and error, so you just have to be patient with it till you can figure out what kind of medications, what kind of diet you need to be on, what causes the big issues, and what makes you feel better. And it's very it's very tiresome, but just be patient with it. You'll eventually get through it.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you so much for listening to In Sickness and in Health. Subscribe and stay tuned for everything we have to come. And keep an eye on your podcast feeds or our website for the last episode in this series celebrating Dysautonomia Awareness Month. We have been posting a new episode every day this week and can't wait to hear your feedback. Please rate and review us on iTunes. It helps other people find the show. And tell your family, tell your friends, tell your doctors. But most important, don't forget to be excellent to yourselves and each other.